Hello and welcome to this month's episode of Homeschool Helps and Hacks. And today's topic is going to be socialization. And we were talking just before we went live about how hard that word is to say. So try to say it 5 times fast and see if you can spit it out. I am joined today by Amber and Jennifer, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. Amber.
Hi. My name is Amber Severance, and I have been homeschooling for almost 20 years. My oldest is 23 now. My youngest is 11, just turned 11, and she is going to start 6th grade this fall. I have a junior at home and 2 in college, and then that one that's out. So lots of issues making friends and socializing here, lots of ground covered. So hopefully we'll be an encouragement to you today.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Amber. And Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Price. I have been homeschooling 4 kids for about 20 years. My oldest is also 23. I have 2 out of the house adulting, 1 in high school, and then my youngest is 7th grade this year. I have kids who are introverts and extroverts. We've dealt with moving, we've dealt with friend groups, we've dealt with co-ops. So hopefully we can get some questions answered today.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're with us today, Jen. And my name is Judy. I am the marketing sales manager for Sunlight, and I'm also a veteran homeschooling mom. All my kids are grown and having kids of their own who are homeschooling. So yes, lots of good experience here today as we talk about questions and hopefully answers dealing with the topic of socialization related to homeschooling. And hopefully you were able to view the earlier presentation that was part of today's series and got lots of good tips and ideas from there. And so we're going to talk today about some questions that we got from folks both through the Sunlight app and also our Facebook Connections group page. So we're going to deal with some of those, but while you're listening in, please drop your questions in the chat there on the right of your screen, and we will be happy to try to address those as well, along with the ones that we already have. And if for some reason we don't get to your question, if we're so overwhelmed with questions, please feel free to go over to the Sunlight app or over to our Facebook group page and ask your question there as well. We'll promise to look for them there, and I'm sure you'll have lots of great input from others who are there. So ladies, let's start with Kat's question. Kat asks, what falls under socialization? So are we talking about group sports? Are we talking about playing with cousins? Are we talking about going to the grocery store? Is it a co-op? How would you basically define or describe socialization? Who wants to go first?
Jen, you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
In my mind, socialization is behaving properly, behaving well with all kinds of people, and understanding the rules of courtesy and friendship and interacting. And so sometimes that is in group sports, and sometimes that's at the grocery store or at church with people your age, older, younger. To me, all of it is socialization. I mean, when my kids leave, I want them to be functional members of society. And so they have to be able to deal with everybody in all kinds of situations and understand how to read people and how to be a good friend and how to understand, the different interactions that they have with people and the different levels of, stranger to acquaintance to friend that all of those fall in.
Yeah. And I would say anytime your children are in any social situation, right, there's people involved. Today, Julia and I had to go to pick up eyeglasses for her. So you're interacting with this optician who's asking you questions, and you're looking her in the eye, and you're responding to the nice older couple that sat next to you in the chair. And all of these are opportunities to interact with people and to learn what that looks like. So I think, yes, pretty much every time you leave your house is an opportunity to interact socially with other human beings.
And I think we interact socially with other human beings even without leaving our house.
Yes.
Because certainly your family setting is a location where your
Yes.
children can learn to act appropriately in a social situation. And to me, it's truly the perfect setting, because you have adults in your house, and you have siblings who are of different ages in your house, younger siblings, maybe older siblings, maybe. If you have an only child, then you have a child who's interacting just with adults. So really lots of opportunity to learn how to socialize, even at home.
Yeah, if you can convince your children that you and their father are actually human beings, that's where it's going to start.
True. Very true. Absolutely. Well, that's great. I can't imagine how we could add to that. So let's move on. Lynn asks, says, I feel like socialization is different from friendship. She says, I wonder how you find solid friendships at activities that change every few months, like gymnastics or sports. Basically, where do they find their close friends? I think this is an excellent question. I remember wrestling through this with my kids. So what can we share with Lynn about socialization versus friendships?
Yeah, that's a good one. I hear what she's saying, because you join the youth soccer team for a couple months and they're fun kids and you hang out, and sometimes moms will even take our phone number or whatever, but then we never hear from them again, right? So yeah, there is a difference. I think a short answer for me would be that my kids' most long-lasting friendships have happened through church and through youth group at this stage, or through co-op, where they really are spending time. However, we were doing karate for a while, and a little girl showed up. Her father asked if Julia could, get to, meet her and help her feel comfortable. Well, she only did karate for about 6 weeks, the other little girl, but we found out they didn't live far from us. And that ended up being a really nice friendship. And we are still friends now. And it's been about 3 years. So they'll call every once in a while. We'll get together. I've spent time with them, so I know that she's safe at their home. And that has turned out to be a nice friendship, not just for Julia, but for me and my husband as well. So I think those things happen. You can't force it. It's like anything else with friendship. You can't force it, but opportunities will come. I think sometimes we can be so anxious about this for our kids that we kind of force it even before it's ready. I have other thoughts about that, but I'll let Jen jump in here.
Some of my, in addition to everything Amber said about, church and youth group and activities being a great place to find friends. My older son has friends that he made from soccer. And they played kind of higher caliber soccer, and they kept the same team basically for a couple of years. And so after traveling together and spending 5 days a week with these people, those are friendships that have still held even into their adulthood. And, because they have so much in common, these boys with similar interests. The other place that my kids found friends was the kids of my friends. And the people that I was spending time with and then making my kids tag along, those were the people that they, sometimes it's just for a season and sometimes it's for much longer, but some of their friends are the kids of the people that I was friends with.
And Jen, you just said sometimes it's for a season. And I think that's another important point, because even as adults, that's what our friendships end up being, right? Yeah. So I went to a traditional school, but I wouldn't say that I'm super close with anyone from high school. There are some people that, it's nice to say hi to once in a while.
Yeah.
College was another season of friendship, but as you move on in life, it changes. And so with our friends, for our children as well.
I agree. even close friends can be for a season.
Yes.
So let's take this topic maybe a step further and talk about what a friendship looks like. If someone were to ask you what you look for in a friend, or what you would like to teach your children about being a good friend, what does that look like? Or maybe you have some idea of resources or books or something that parents could use to help their kids figure out how to be a good friend or to find good friends. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. Jen, you're so good at remembering book titles and books. I was going to say, I feel like there are a couple books that I worked through with my kids when they were younger about friendship, but they are not popping into my brain right now.
There's one that we used called Right Choices.
Okay.
I think that's what it's called. There is also, I believe, an American Girl, that kind of tween series. There's some books in there about friendship. I'm not coming up with anything that's like, oh, my go-to book. It's just not. I mean, my go-to was always just talk it out. If you feel like somebody is not being a good friend, why? Which always leads into being a good friend is treating people the way you would like to be treated. And if you feel free to do something that you would feel like was mean if somebody did it to you, then there's your problem.
Right. We work really hard on with our children to help them really think about other people. Right. Mm-hmm. So even, this is just a natural place, but on our way to church, look for someone who seems lonely. Smile at people. If there's someone there who you've never seen before, go up to them and introduce yourself. That's not easy, and of course we're not watching and making sure it happens, but just the idea and the encouragement of it, we try to model that too. So it's not like we're asking them to do something that we aren't expecting of ourselves. But I think the other thing is also you kind of know your children, and when they're with people that it's difficult, it's always hard, right? The feelings are always being hurt. That's probably not a great friendship.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And we've had kids who had to pull back from friendships because even when you like somebody, if it's, even if you have fun together, if there's always drama, or if you're always dealing with hurt feelings on one side or the other, or expectations of time or, the depth of the friendship don't match, it just doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's also a place too where we can encourage our kids to pray about good friends. Mm-hmm. I remember different seasons in my children's lives where they struggled with feeling very alone, mm-hmm. or like they didn't have close friends, or they were seeing other acquaintances in friendships, but they weren't included. And so you're right. There are a lot of very practical things that we can encourage our kids to do. Model friendship yourself. If you want friends, you need to be a friend. Mm-hmm. But I think there's also room to say, you could talk to the Lord about that, because here's an issue in your life as a young person. There are going to be a lot of issues in your life as an adult, bigger than friends. Mm-hmm. What a wonderful place to help them start leaning into the Lord and trusting the Lord for answers in those things that they can't seem to figure out on their own. And so I think it's helpful to remind them that there is someone who has the answers. And maybe we could talk a little bit when it comes to friendships. Should every child expect to have close friends? I mean, do we all have friends all the time? Do you as an adult, can you identify this is my best friend forever? Or what do you think?
I'm really glad you said that, because I was just thinking that I feel like we put a lot of pressure on the whole best friend thing. There is not a person, so as a girl, right? There's not necessarily a kindred spirit who knows your thoughts and likes all the things you do, and you do everything the same. We kind of have that Anne of Green Gables idyllic sort of picture sometimes when there isn't a human being on earth who is going to meet all the needs of your heart. And I have really felt that it's always better to have a broad group of friends. And obviously by broad, I don't mean the Facebook friend thing. Like I've got 500 friends and none of them really know me. I'm talking about, you have a group of friends, and different ones add something special to your life, or different ones pull something out of you, or you pull something out of them. That's really cool. That's really special. And again, there's a lot of self-centeredness, I think, wrapped up in the friendship gig, where I'm looking for someone that, and it's really very self-focused, instead of looking at others and seeing, oh, that's a really nice person, I'd like to get to know them, So, this is a hard thing. I think that it would behoove us as moms to kind of start breaking that down a little bit. There doesn't have to be a best friend. Let's find some nice friends, plural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes it is for a season. Sometimes there are going to be kids that you look forward to seeing again at soccer in the fall, or kids that you're going to look forward to seeing at the pool over the summer. We have this concept in our family of summer people, because there are people who, our kids go to different schools, our jobs don't overlap, our kids are different ages. And then when swim team hits, we see each other 5 days a week. And so there's a lot of catching up, and then there's a lot of common experience and common excitement. And then I know they're there, but we're probably going to see them a few times before next summer, where we will see them all the time again. And that's okay. Not everything has to be the be all end all single, like you said, Anne of Green Gables friend. Mm-hmm. And two, I wonder if we shortchange our kids by not prioritizing like people we can trust that are not necessarily like happy, fun times, friends, maybe that are your exact same age. Because as an adult, I need people to like have fun and celebrate with, but knowing that I have people who I can trust to be honest with me, who can, who are discreet, who are wise, that is way more important to me than like, do I have a BFF? And so, I wonder if we haven't been modeling that well either.
And I think, again, if we can teach our kids to flip that concept around, and instead of always seeking for a friend and where are my friends, maybe we need to help them ask the question, who can I be a friend to? And who, like you mentioned earlier, Amber, who looks lonely or looks like they're left out sometimes? And maybe a wonderful friendship can develop when I am the initiator and when I'm the one that takes that first step. Mm-hmm. Lots to think about in that whole area of friendships. And I would have to agree that a lot of times we have just created this pie in the sky expectation picture of what this wonderful friend looks like, and they probably don't exist.
Yeah.
I was thinking also that sometimes we just need to wait, to be patient. I have a son who's an introvert, but I think he, for many years as a little guy, was so happy to play by himself and to do his own thing. He had 3 older siblings and a younger sibling, so he was getting his buttons pushed. It wasn't like he was by himself all the time. I'm not talking about that. But he didn't seem to really care. Like, oh, it's your birthday, there's nobody to have over because you don't have a million friends. We would have family friends over, whatever. And sometimes it would nag at me like, oh, is this kid ever going to have any friends? Or I don't know. It would just kind of bother me. But you know what? God did it. God did it. We moved a few times, and a few of the places we went, there just weren't people. But then where we moved most recently, there was this nice group of kids, boys, his age, and now they've gone through, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and they're headed into their junior year. And this is his group. And it's a large group and it's a varied group. They're not all homeschooled. They're not all, there's the different things going on there, but they are good friends and healthy friendships. And they just have a fun time together. And God did that. I didn't need to work too hard to push him. He didn't need to be pushed. I actually asked him about this question. I said, we're going to be doing this. And he goes, Mom, I mean, some people just don't talk a lot. Some people, it's okay. Yeah. And even he has friends. He's like, man, they're so quiet, but they're still his friends.
Yeah.
And they hang out and they have fun. So I think just keeping their personalities in mind. And sometimes we think they need stuff that maybe we just need to hold off on.
And I think all of us have enough kids to be able to say for sure, this does not look the same on every kid.
No,
this does not look the same. There is no one right way to make sure your kids have friends. They don't all need the same things. They can't all offer the same things. And, kids all have different preferences. And so there is not one single way. Kids can be happy with a friend. Maybe it looks like no real friends, but they have great relationships with their siblings. Some people need a lot of people to be in relationships with. Everybody's different. And I think that is a God-given thing, and that's okay. And so as homeschool moms, we worry, am I doing it right? Am I failing my kid, right? Am I failing my kid? Isn't that the big question? And like you said about your son, Amber, you're not failing your kid. He is getting what he needs. It just doesn't look like we thought maybe it would look. And that's okay.
And it's interesting because his older brother is such a people person. And for him, it's people all the time, right? Like, what do you want to do? I just want to have 30 people over and have a big bonfire. And he's about it. And he's a connector. Like he easily pick up the phone and he could get 30 people over here. Well, that's not what Ben wants at all, So it's a very, each of them are different. Each personality is different. And I can't say, well, Ben, why aren't you more like Josiah?
Right.
Why aren't you Mr. Personality? Why aren't you, people aren't going to like you. No, don't compare them. Just leave them alone. enjoy how Ben is. Enjoy how my Josiah is. Just enjoy how God's made them.
Absolutely. Let's jump over to a question that we got. May Young asks, how do you help a young child who says that she hates school after a year of homeschooling and refuses to go into Sunday school as a result? What do you think?
I think two things. Number one, I would ask some open-ended questions about why she hates school, because she may be talking about something very particular, or it may just be a feeling. I don't actually know, which is why I would investigate that and see what she's thinking and how she's feeling. The second thing I think is that when my kids refuse to go to Sunday school, they're welcome to sit with me in whatever I'm doing. They may sit and listen in my class. They may sit with me in church, however you do it. That's fine. If you'd rather sit and listen to the sermon than go to Sunday school with all the loud 5-year-olds, I kind of feel you.
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, I think too, when a child is so young, they're going to say things like, I hate school, and they really have no clue what they're talking about. And so I also think it's okay to be the adult in that situation and say, I'm sorry that you hate school, but we've got to move. It is what's going to happen, right? But Jen is absolutely right. I think to kind of validate that and then say, so you hate school. What exactly do you hate? Can you tell me what it is that you dislike? And, who knows, it could be anything. So I definitely think that you should explore that as a mom. But then also, if this is a 6 or 7-year-old, like I remind myself, the brain is not fully formed. So you know what's best, Mom. You know what's best for that child at this point, and God will give you wisdom.
And if it's a 12 or 13-year-old, I used to remind myself, this is a brain on hormones, Mom.
Correct.
And many days that child doesn't know whether they're coming or going. And so you probably need to offer some direction there as well.
Yes,
But,
absolutely.
yeah, I agree with you. Asking some good questions would probably be helpful in that situation.
Yes.
Let's move on. We got a question from Laura. And this, I think, is a very common question. And so I'm glad someone asked. And actually, there are a couple that are very similar. So I'm going to read them both. How do you combat those that say you are failing your child in this arena of socialization? And Birgit asks, how do we respond to the opinionated people who think they know what's best for our kids without sounding like a meanie? So how do you talk to what may be very well-meaning relatives or next door neighbors who don't know your kids at all, but have an opinion? Or what do you think? What would be your best advice here?
My best advice would be smile and nod. Thank you for asking. You're very sweet. They're doing great. Because everybody has an opinion. People love to talk about socialization and what homeschool kids are missing. As the moms of homeschooled kids who are now adults, do we have any concerns about how they turn out?
Right.
We don't. But grandparents are concerned and neighbors are well-meaning, and so yeah, I've never combated those opinions. I have never really responded much to them. Thank you for asking. We're doing really well. Yeah, we're loving it. Of course he has friends. He plays soccer. We go to church. We see people every day. But I think you have to get out of your mind that you need to combat it. That, if these are not people you would ask for advice about raising your kids, you probably don't really need to warrant much of their criticism either.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think we touched on this a little bit in the previous seminar, Judy, but I meet so many kids from so many different kinds of schooling that seem much more awkward than any homeschool children that I've ever met. It just surprises me. But could you repeat the first gal's question at the very end? Can you repeat that sentence?
She said, how do you combat those that say you're failing your child in this arena?
Okay, so someone's actually saying to me, you are failing your child in the socialization arena. I mean, I would ask them to define. I might ask, I agree with Jen, we don't need to go there. But if that's a pretty hard accusation, and I just think, man, could you define exactly what do you mean by this socialization arena? I just think it's so funny. I talk to we have neighborhood kids who are in public school struggling to make friends. They don't have friends. Just because you have to go to school doesn't mean you have friends. It doesn't mean you're well socialized just because you show up at a school and walk around to classes and sit there and take notes and take tests and leave. It doesn't, do you see what I'm saying? Like, we've talked about this. That's not, but there's just this stereotype thing. And as my son said, when I asked him about advice, he's like, people have stereotypes. That's why they're stereotypes. Just ignore them. So I think Jen's right. You kind of just smile and nod.
If it's someone like grandma who you can't get rid of and you can't really politely blow off, I think Amber makes a good point. Mom, what are you worried about? What is your concern that they're not getting?
Yes.
Is there, how can I reassure you that they're fine?
Yes.
Because, that's like with the Sunday school kid, maybe there's something specific that she means, and socialization is just the code word that she's using for it. If we can get down to what the concern is, then maybe it's something that is easy to address.
Yeah.
And she does go on and say that her parents are very pro public school. Her mother was a public school teacher, and she feels like she's in an exhausting circular conversation where she and her parents are on opposite sides. And I would add to what you said, but really just saying the same thing. I would approach it from a very positive aspect. These are the children that God gave us, and we have prayed about this, and we have researched this, and as their parents, we truly feel that this is the direction that God has given us. And it's certainly legitimate to ask, what is it you're concerned about? My husband came from a family full of public school teachers. And so every year at Christmas, I would see well-meaning aunts and uncles pulling my children aside and quizzing them, not only academically, but, what are you involved in? Are you playing any sports? Are you, and so you know that they're well-meaning. But I think, it's really not any different than well-meaning grandparents or parents who say, I really don't think you're disciplining that child enough, or I think you're too harsh with that child, or there are always going to be people who question your parenting choices and your parenting skills. And somewhere you're going to have to draw a line in the sand graciously and say, this is my God-given responsibility. God blessed me and my husband with these children. You already raised yours.
Yes.
And trust the way that you raised me to be able to turn around and raise my own children in the way that God would have me.
And Judy, wouldn't you say too, I don't happen to be in that particular situation. I have supportive in-laws, and my father taught Christian school for years. I think that would have maybe been his preference, but the deal is I've heard from a lot of people that starting out, lots of questions, lots of criticisms, but usually over time, people are won over. So I think part of that, I'm wondering how far in the journey this mom is, but pretty much after about second or third grade, when they can really see that these children are well-adjusted and learning, those questions tend to go away a little bit. I wonder if that was kind of your experience too.
Yes, and just as a side note, it's really helpful if you have those homeschooled children of yours to make cards to send to Grandma and Grandpa, draw beautiful pictures on the front, write a wonderful note inside, have, your children, there's lots of free video technology out there. I'm trying to think of the one and it slipped my mind, but anyway, Marco Polo. Have your kids read from a section. Have your kids record a story they've written or they're reading. Have your kids just have a conversation with Grandma or Grandpa about what they did with their best friend this last weekend, or what they did in school, the science project that they're working on, and send pictures. And like Amber said, over time, the proof is going to be in the pudding. They're going to see the end result of your homeschooling efforts, and it's going to prove itself. It truly is.
Yeah. The other thing that worked for me, I was very lucky. My mom was always supportive, but not just the kids reading to her, but she would read to them. She got some of her favorite little kid books and recorded herself reading them. And so my kids have recordings of Grandma reading to them. So they can pick up the book and Grandma is reading it on the cassette tape. Let me just age myself right here. And so if Grandma is concerned that all these kids are getting is mom all day, and how is that going to work? Maybe Grandma would like to participate. Maybe she would like to do science experiments or read aloud or, get out some math manipulatives, because grandmas are good for that too.
Absolutely. Yep. Good. I think those are some great suggestions. And I think in a lot of ways it boils down to a need for you to be confident in the decisions that you've made and believe in what you're doing. And that will also radiate from you to other people as they sense your confidence. Let's move on. We've got a couple of questions here in chat. If you can't find a co-op near you, how do you start one? Raquel asks. And so maybe we stop here just for a quick second and talk about co-ops as a possibility for socialization, and maybe you guys have a couple quick thoughts about co-ops.
Yeah, I think if you don't have a co-op near you, I think one thing that you might try just to start off gently is one place we lived, they had like an enrichment day. So a bunch of us would get together, and it was broken down by age, like first to third, fourth to sixth, littles, and then high school. And it was just once a month. It was enrichment day. And so the upper elementary kids were learning about states and their capitals. And every time she would focus on a different area of the country, and they would do, find out what national parks were there, and, just different cultural things. And it ended up being sweet. And with the kindergartner, the little ones, someone would read a book and there would be a basic craft, but it was like 9 to 12 once a month. I feel like that's maybe not super hard to try to pull off. I would feel overwhelmed trying to start a co-op myself, but I'm happy to jump in and take some classes once in a while when I feel the need. But maybe an enrichment day would be a way to start with just 3 or 4 other families.
Mm-hmm. You can also go on our website and search for connections. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we actually have Sunlight connectors out there who have started in life, in real, in-person Sunlight groups in their area. And there's a map there on the page that will show you if there's one near you. You can let us know that you're interested in starting one in your area, if there's not one maybe. And so check that out, because that is certainly a very good possibility for a co-op. And I would say the same thing as Amber did, start one. I was looking for a co-op. The closest one I could find was a 30-minute drive, and it cost money on top of the drive. And that was something that we chose not to do. And so we found some like-minded homeschooling families in our church, and we got together. First, we started with once a month, and then we bumped it up to once a week. And we just found common interests and desires, and that's where our co-op started. So lots of possibilities for sure.
We've moved several times, and my favorite co-op situation that we ever had was it was a field trip group.
Yeah.
Didn't do classes. Everybody did their own, whatever curriculum you were using, whatever academics. But every 3 weeks, every month-ish, we did field trips. And so it was the Christmas tree farm or the corn maze, or like a morning at the ice skating rink, or whatever the local state park was, or, when they were having like show and animal day or whatever. We went to tapping maple trees for sap demonstration, all kinds of things. And sometimes it was like the water park, and sometimes it was something way more naturey and homeschooly. But I mean, we did tie-dye, and we did, hiking, and we did all different things. And some mom would say, okay, I'm gonna tie-dye. We're making a big gigantic mess in the yard. Who wants to come over? And then all these people would go. Or it was, it's homeschool day at ice skating. This is the time to show up. It costs this many dollars per kid. And so without having that like weekly, we need volunteers, kind of complicated commitment situation, just like find your local people, advertise it among your friends, and, the people come out of the woodwork as soon as there's something fun they don't need to volunteer for.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, it's okay to keep things simple. One of my favorite seasons of homeschooling was when my kids were 3rd grade and under, and we had one other friend in the neighborhood who we really meshed with philosophically, spiritually, and our kids kind of matched up, all 4 of them at that time. And we just did, like Jen said, it was one other family, but we did fun things together every couple of weeks, or just hung out. And it was so good for me to just have kind of a break, and all the kids played together, and it was fun. And those friends have become life friends, even though we only had 2 years together and they moved far away to Colorado. Our oldest stayed very good friends for a very long time, and all of them still, it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed here Jody says that she's been trying to find connections and she's never heard back. Am I missing something? I really apologize, Jody. I will check into that for you. I've jotted down your name, and I will make sure that we reach out to you after this is over and see if we can get your questions about connections answered. All right, let's move on. Esther asks, how do you know if your child who seems reserved or socially awkward is the way he or she is by personality, or is he or she truly lacking in socializing opportunities either by quantity or quality? So what do you think?
I'm sorry, did you say how old that child was, or do we have any ideas?
She's talking about her daughter, who does go to Sunday school. She really doesn't give an age.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because I was going to say that reminds me of my son, and he's an introvert, and that doesn't mean he doesn't like people. One time we had a couple friends over. I think he was about 8, and after about 45 minutes, the friends were having a great time, and there's no Ben anywhere. Where's Ben? I don't know. Up in his room. So I go up to the room, and there's Ben cleaning his room, straightening his shoes. Like, what 8-year-old boy cleans his room anyway? Like, hey Ben, what's going on? He's like, I just kind of tired. Just need to be alone. Okay. If you are an introvert, you understand that very well, that he needed a break to recharge a little. The guy needed to recharge, and he couldn't say that, right? I just thought it was so hilarious because I am not that way at all. So anyway, and then, I could worry about that, but I just needed to respect it. It's just the way God has wired him. Yeah. So I think some of that is, you are a student of your child. You're learning about them. That doesn't mean you don't ever kind of nudge them, to get outside of themselves, expand a little bit, but also they might be very different from you, and it is okay. And we see the world differently from other people, don't we? I mean, that's part of maturing, is learning that, not everybody thinks like I do. Not everybody sees the world like I do. And that's true of us as parents, especially early on. We start learning that a lot as our children are much different than we are.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of those places too where we're putting a lot of pressure
I
on
agree.
ourselves, on our kids, to have life and friendship and interactions look like we think they need to look.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we, I'm a homeschool mom, I'm into history. And when we look at history, we see people who were perfectly functional in society and did their jobs well, who lived with family members or not, and had people they interacted with at their job or not, and didn't agonize over like the whole friend situation. So if this child is relatively happy and at peace, then maybe that's just who they are. Maybe the expectation that we need a ton of friends, or it needs to be enough. Maybe re-look at that. I don't know.
Jen, my son did history of science this year from Sunlight. And I wonder what the mother of Isaac Newton felt like. So if you haven't had a chance to read about Isaac Newton, try it and see what you would have thought if that child were if that man had grown up in your home.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know what I would have thought, but I might have kept him from doing and thinking all the amazing things he did because I didn't understand.
Exactly.
And if you're Isaac Newton, who do you even talk to about that stuff?
You don't. You don't talk to anybody.
He's gonna get it. And so,
and you're kind of grouchy too.
Yeah, I imagine. And I imagine that a lot of those people were kind of grouchy because
And
they were
different.
just kind of in their own heads.
Yes.
So my answer would be, if that child is relatively peaceful and happy, then probably the quality of their interactions is fine. And it could be that there's an introvert extrovert difference between that one and somebody else in the house that's making mom tingle a little bit, but it sounds okay.
Yeah, And I think, too, we need to allow ourselves as moms not to worry or to be fearful about our children and their interactions with other people. I think if we are being intentional about finding opportunities for our kids to interact, finding opportunities for our family as a whole to interact with other families, then we can probably trust that God has a plan for that child. And it might involve being more of an introvert, because someday that child may be an Isaac Newton. Who are we to know, you know?
And Judy, it brings up an interesting point. I'm looking at a question from Amanda. It looks to me like the child she's referring to might be in second grade and talks about she's doing all these things, right? The mom is trying to do play dates and music class and church and extra play dates because this child, wants to be with people all the time. And so the extrovert side of it also maybe we could address to say that moms, you can only do so much. I just talked to a mom the other day, and she said, man, we're hitting some of the high school years, and then my little ones, and I feel bad because they don't get to do all these things. But if I'm not careful, we're going to be at one or two places every single night of the week trying to do stuff. And I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, it's okay if those younger ones aren't doing stuff every single night and every single day.
Yep.
And you might have a child that really, really wants to do stuff, but you are part of the reason they aren't on their own living somewhere is because they need parents to teach them what moderation looks like and to teach them that rest is a good thing and that we can't be someplace every single night. They have to learn that there are boundaries to all of that. And I think this mom says she's worried. I would encourage you not to worry. I think I said this earlier. I also have a son who, he's said to me when he was younger, I just can't wait to get out of here so I can, just be with, and he's at college now and he's like a puppy, like people everywhere. It's so exciting. And that's awesome for him. But I couldn't do that for him when he was in our house, and I didn't need to. He also needed time to grow and develop and be bored once in a while and learn to be creative. These are good things. And research is proving that, is proving that the quiet time, the bored time, it's good and it's healthy. So don't put that pressure on yourself.
And if you haven't had an opportunity yet to see the first session this afternoon, both of these sessions will be available in replay for the next 30 days. I would encourage you to go ahead and listen to that and listen to Dina talk about how she grew up in a very rural area, and there were no other children around for her to play with. And she had to learn to be creative herself with her time and her interests. And not that I'm saying you should, close your children away and never allow them to interact, but sometimes we also have to teach our children to be content and to not have to have something going on every minute of the day. A lot of times a child who is not content is a child that's basically telling you by their actions and their reactions that they need some direction and they need some help understanding what it means to be content in whatever situation they find themselves.
Judy, what if I'm looking at Jody and Lori both saying something about an only child, and I'm also wondering, maybe you could piece that social thing and the only child thing and say, hey, this week we're going to do 3 things, whatever, not counting church, if church is part of your life, not counting church, but we have time this week for 3 kind of adventures or 3 play dates. What would you like pull them into the planning so they actually understand that you're thinking of it. You're not trying to trap them, but then they can also, I wonder if that would be kind of a fun way to limit it, but also give them some options, what would be 3 good things we could do this week? And maybe one of them is a volunteer thing. Maybe one of them is a play date, and maybe one of them is, a field trippy sort of thing. But maybe pulling them into, I haven't fleshed that out. That just popped into my head, but I wonder if that wouldn't be kind of a fun way of teaching them a little bit about time management. And we have time for this much. Why don't you help me come up with something?
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of launch off from what you said, when our kids were in high school, we required them to have volunteer option of some sort on their plate all 4 years of their high school experience. And so I had one who volunteered in a medical center. I had another one who volunteered at an adaptive writing farm for challenged individuals. Help them find, especially if they're older children, high school age, help them find volunteer opportunities. Those are wonderful opportunities for socialization. And it gets them out and into the real world, gives them opportunities to learn new things. So volunteering absolutely is one way I would highly recommend that you help your kids to get out there and interact with more people, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. We're kind of running low on time here. We don't want to go over the hour that we have. So I'd kind of like to wrap this up. One of the gals who asked prior to this event, Sylvia, talked about what about having other teachers rather than just mom? And she said, I know this is not what we think about as a typical socialization issue, but what if kids are only learning from my teaching style? And would it be helpful, or are my kids missing out if I'm their only teacher? What do you think?
Yes and no. Of course, if you're their only teacher, then they're missing out on learning from other people, but only in the same way that public school children are missing out on learning from their mom. I mean, when you have, you can only have one thing going at a time. And just because we're homeschooling doesn't mean you're the only person they're learning from forever. If they have a Sunday school teacher and a music teacher and a swim coach and a soccer coach, that's 4 people who are probably not you. Mm-hmm. And so being able to adjust to other people's expectations is still happening. I mean, if they go to grandma's house and the rules at grandma's house are slightly different than the rules at home, there they are learning from someone else. Yeah. Judy's nodding because she's the funnest grandma. Like we were saying about co-ops, there's opportunities all the time to put your homeschool child in one class or, one day of class or whatever the situation is. This is the 21st century homeschool. This is not your mom's homeschooling. And so are they missing out? Yes and no. Those younger years with my kids, I wouldn't trade those for $1 million. No wonder, no matter what they would have gotten out of it if they had been in a different situation. As they get older, I'll be honest and say I was happy to farm those children out all the time.
And I agree with Jen. I wouldn't trade those early years of being the only person that they learned from necessarily. I mean, they did go to Sunday school. They did have Awana. They were learning from others. As they get older, we're taking music lessons. Those count as learning from other people. Art lessons, music lessons, karate. I mentioned that before. Those are opportunities to learn from somebody else. Even if it's not in a formal classroom setting, it's still learning from other people. And yes, it's valuable. Other people have lots to teach us. We have a sweet lady giving sewing lessons. She doesn't even charge, an older woman in our church, and Julie is learning from her. So it doesn't always have to be in a classroom setting. Those things count as learning from others. And I imagine that if you think through all the things your kids are involved in, probably they're learning from someone.
Yes.
And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to allow them to join a community sports team or something. Be involved, be present, pay attention, but give them that opportunity to learn from someone. It's okay. It's good.
Absolutely.
And I would add to that, once you've made a decision to homeschool, to that this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and you have agreement in your family and you have peace about it, and this is something you've prayed about, just go with it. There are things you're not going to have, there are things you're going to have, but it's going to be okay. You are the perfect mom for these kids. You are the good decision maker. Nobody else in the world has as much investment in these particular children as you do. So you can trust yourself. You can trust your husband to make good decisions for your kids, and it's going to be okay.
Yes, absolutely. So let's wrap this up real quick. Give me one soundbite, one little tidbit of advice, encouragement that you would offer on this topic of socialization based on your experience with socializing your wonderful children. Amber.
I think I mentioned this in the pre-recorded session, but do you care about people? And I think that kind of is at the heart of it, that your children catch more than they're taught. You model that you care about people, and you teach them what it looks like to care about people. And part of that is being respectful and honoring of others, no matter their age, looking people in the eye, speaking kindly and nicely, those sorts of things. And of course, I mean, my belief is that comes from Christ, right? That we see value in other people because God created them. He sent his son to die for us and for these people. And so we can develop a heart of kindness and love for others. And I think that that's probably maybe the most important thing I could say. I have lots of things that I would love to say, but that, if you ask me for one,
Running out of time.
for people. Yeah.
Jen, what do you think?
Well, Amber sort of took mine because recently my husband and I were having a parenting discussion, and he said something to the effect of, but you are the authority. And I said, really, I'm the example. So that behavior that you don't like in him, you got to know that it's because he's me. I'm the example. And so if I am content where I am, if I am not, constantly chasing, I need from other people, then that's what your kids will learn also. So since Amber took that one, I'm going to say the best thing I ever did for my kids' socialization is that I stopped limiting my definition of their friends to people of their age and gender. And when my 10-year-old's best friend was a 60-year-old woman, that's just the way it was. Yeah. And when, my daughter's, one of her best friends is the age of her big sister, that's okay. And they're valuable friendships. They bring things to the table I could not. They're good for each other. And it's okay that they're not 2 8-year-old girls like Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
I love
that. Excellent. Well, I certainly can't add to what you've shared, and I appreciate you both so much and what you've been willing to share. And again, as we mentioned before, number one, the replays of these videos will be available for the next 30 days. So if you didn't catch everything you wanted to catch, or you wanted to go back through and listen again, you will have 30 days to do that. If we were not able to get to your question, I do apologize. We had so many good questions ahead of time, and today you can absolutely stop over again in the Sunlight app. And if you don't know about the Sunlight app, you can check that out on our website at sunlight.com, or you can stop over in the Facebook connections group and ask your questions there. We will keep an eye open for them and be sure to get you some answers. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. And for all of you who listened in, we appreciate your interacting with us, and we hope you have a blessed day.